everyone. Good morning and welcome to First Things First. I'm Jenna Wolf. That's the Hall of Famer Cris Carter. This right here is Nick Wright. With the NFL season exactly a week away, got a lot to talk about today. Tom Brady and the Patriots find themselves surrounded by questions. Patrick Mahomes seems to have zero questions. We'll tell you why. And we've now reached that point where Cowboys are preparing for life without Zeke. Yes, the Dallas Cowboys are well aware that replacing the league's leading rusher 2 of the last 3 seasons is not easy, but it is a reality. Ezekiel Elliott is in Cabo, his team is in Dallas, and that Week 1 game against the Giants is quickly approaching. But if you ask Jerry Jones, he somehow doesn't seem too concerned about starting this season without his all-pro running back. Here's why.
Listen, we've got a marathon here, and we want Zeke when we get to the playoffs. We want Zeke when we're in the dog days of this season. And as you well know, you have to plan your personnel and you have to manage a player the caliber of Zeke. You have to, as to what parts of the game you use him, how much rest you use him. And so fresh Zeke, as we got on into the end of the season, would be great.
Ah, yes, the story that keeps on giving. So first they wanted Zeke in for training camp, then it was before the first game, and now it's, hey, at least we'll have him for the playoffs, hopefully. What's your reaction to what Jerry Jones had to say, CC?
Well, history is not on his side. Most people that miss training camp, they go on to not have a spectacular season, but especially as far as soft tissue injuries, as far as skilled guys, wide receivers, and running backs, it's hard because you don't have that 4 weeks of training camp. Even if you don't play in any preseason games, that's not necessary, but getting your body ready for a season. So even him thinking that, yeah, he might not play at the beginning of the season, yes, but he'll be fresh at the end of the season, it doesn't work like that. Typically, when you go through all your training camp, in my 16 years of playing in the league, 13 of the 16 years, I think I played at least 12 games. And in those 3 years that I didn't, missed both the training. My rookie year, missed the training camp. My last year, didn't attend training camp. And those were the years I was least productive and least being available. I know the new system, collective bargaining agreement, there's less practices, less two-a-days. So for me, careers are getting shorter compared to what players thought when they signed it, getting longer. So them thinking, oh, just because he's not here the first couple of weeks, oh, he'll be fresh at the end. No, and there might not be an end. Like as a playoffs, your regular season, that could be the end of the season for you, because without Zeke, I don't believe they're a playoff team.
Jerry sometimes says really smart things, sometimes says really funny things, sometimes says total nonsense. This, to me, goes in bucket number 3. None of this made any sense. First of all, the idea that, well, actually, even if Zeke were signed, sealed, and delivered, we'd be happy to maybe not play him the first couple weeks, because, no, that's obviously...
Yeah, we were going to start the season with him on a pitch count.
Right, that's obviously not the case. Pitch counts with running backs. Sometimes if you're in a good enough position where you're 8-2 and your running back's been your bell cow and you know you're going to make the playoffs, you might start in that final third of the season starting to lighten his workload preparing for the playoffs, but you got to get to the playoffs first. So that's the first point. Second point is, the Cowboys are not a team that you can just simply say, well, pencil them in for the postseason. It's like the Patriots. They've been there every year the last decade plus.
Because of how much that's based on whether Ezekiel Elliott is available.
And because of how good their conference is. 16 teams in the NFC. I can count 6 that I am confident will not be a good football team. The Giants, Washington, Detroit, Tampa, San Francisco, Arizona. And some people would argue with me about San Francisco. So some people would have it just at 5. You've got 3 quality teams in the NFC North, 3 in the NFC South. I believe 2 in the West with the Rams and Seahawks. Some people would say it's Rams and 49ers.
Right.
And then there's the Eagles in the NFC East, plus whatever Dallas is. The idea that Dallas can get off to the slow start they got off to last year, that they could afford to be 3-5 as they were last year, it's just nonsense. And they absolutely, I think, can and will get off to a slow start if Zeke's not there in the beginning.
Yeah, I'm glad you brought up New England, because right now New England holds the second longest winning streak as far as years being in the playoffs.
Like in NFL history, San Francisco.
Yeah, it's 18. Right? No, Dallas.
Oh, okay.
1965. I was born that year. for 21 straight years, they made the playoffs. Now, I know Jerry bought the team from Tex, but he didn't inherit that team, and that's not the current team that they have. So from the year I was born, 1965, to my second year in college at Ohio State, the Cowboys made the playoffs. So thinking that, yes, in that era, no matter what player, oh, yeah, they're going to make the playoffs. But this is not a team like that. In the Dak, Zeke era, they are 20-0 in games where they have run the ball 49% of the time. So Zeke keeps these games close. That's why they're undefeated in these games. Like, that's a absurd number right there. How do I get the victory? Well, they know when Zeke and Dak are playing, let's run the ball. If we get to 49%, there's a great chance we're going to win.
How much does this bolster Ezekiel Elliott's case, his holdout, whatever? What is he hearing when he hears Jerry Jones says, well, we'll have him fresh for the playoffs?
I don't think there is much Jerry says publicly that changes the negotiations privately. I think Zeke, rightly or wrongly, this is not a value proposition, just how I'm reading the situation, has determined I am not showing up until I'm the highest paid running back in football. You guys said months ago that my new contract will start at Todd Gurley's contract, and you guys aren't keeping your word in that regard. Again, not my feelings on it necessarily. I think that's where Zeke and his agent, his representation, their feelings. So I don't think, and I think Zeke is smart enough and his representation smart enough to know the Cowboys are being a little bluffing and like, oh, okay, yeah, no, take the first few weeks off, take the first month of the season off because we just need you for the postseason. The Cowboys will not have a postseason if Ezekiel Elliott does not play at least a dozen games this year, if not 14 to 16 games. They are a good football team. They are not a great football team. And I thought you made a really interesting point yesterday, C, which is take any team in the league. If they were without their best player, what would we say about them? If they were without their most impactful player, what would we say about them? Later in the show, we're going to talk about the Chargers. I'm pessimistic for them this year. You know why? Because they're without their best player, not named Phillip Rivers, Derwin James, for a few months. Like, I know it's the ultimate team sport. There's 50 to 60 guys in this league, aside of the quarterbacks, who really, really matter. Zeke's near the top of that list. They're not talented enough to overcome missing him for a sustained period of time.
We are about a week away from the start of the regular season. It doesn't look like Jerry's going to cave, and it certainly doesn't seem like Zeke is going to cave. Take a break. Coming up, are Tom Brady and the Patriots offense set up for failure? Tell you why we're asking next on FS1. You can always check us out on the Fox Sports channel on SiriusXM. We're back right after this.